In this episode of the Exploring Information Security podcast, How to Network in Information Security, Part 1. Welcome to the Exploring Information Security podcast, where you will learn, explore, and grow your security mindset. I am your host, Timothy D. Block, and in this episode, we will be exploring how to network in information security. And with me today to do that is Johnny Xmas, penetration tester for RERELEASE. Johnny, how are you?
I am doing excellent. I am wrapping up JohnnyCon 2015. I've been speaking at 13 conferences in 3 countries on this topic and others. And it's been amazing, and I am exhausted, and I am still happy to be here.
So speaking of conferences, one of the ones I don't know, I think there was a few of them that at one point we were just constantly going to the same one.
Yeah, it was like you're my personal photographer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
follow me around.
Yeah. But yeah, the one I saw was B-Sides Nashville, where you gave a great talk on how to network at security conferences, which I think is it was in a green track. So I think it's great. It's kind of, we're starting to see a little bit more of those at security conferences.
We are.
Which is, I think, is fantastic, because I think that's a very important skill, and it's a very important opportunity for people that go to these conferences. So kicking it right off, how do you network within information security at security conferences?
Well, that's a way bigger question than you think. How do you define networking? Tell me what networking is.
Well, that would be, I guess, getting to know people, building relationships, making connections with people within a field, or whether it's, a hobby or professionally. Yeah.
So it's kind of making friends, right? It's kind of just like making friends, almost exactly like making friends. Mm-hmm. That's the way I see it. Like networking, I think, like most adjectives these days, is kind of a word that was made up by somebody to sell something. It's, networking has kind of got that corporate power word feeling around it, like, red tie go getter. And I think that word and that definition, it kind of like alienates people and kind of sets it out of grasp, and it makes people, especially younger people who are coming into the industry now, we have one of the youngest workforces in IT outside of like help desk, one of the youngest, but also like most advanced workforces. And so you get a lot of maturity issues within the industry, and a lot of them have difficulty moving above that and moving out of that, because they just feel so alienated and so oppressed by, the suits above them, who use words like networking to get across concepts of just making friends with people. And so I really feel like it's one of those words somebody made up to sell something. And I don't know if that something was a self-help book or just, false importance, making someone else feel that you're more important than you are, because you say like, oh, I've been to a lot of networking events and I'm making a lot of good business contacts. And it's just, it's not really what it is. It's just about making friends. And we have different kinds of friends. We have friends that we'd invite to our weddings, and we have friends we wouldn't invite to our weddings. And not that we don't like them or anything. We just have different tiers of friends, and networking is just about filling that more professional tier of friends. It kind of blurs that line between professional and personal, but in a very specific way. And that blurred line is in itself in its own kind of container. You can get sycophantic with that if you want. If you want to say, I'm making these friends in order to get myself ahead professionally, and I'm just collecting people like Pokemon in order to use them in the future for when I need them. A lot of people do that with great success. Some of us have a moral problem with doing that to people, and prefer to just network by just being good people. I preach the latter, but I can't say which of those methods is more effective, because there's, you have sycophants like well, I won't name any names, but they've both proven to be greatly effective. And however you work is up to you, whatever works for you.
What are some, and it's all about building relationships, and like you said, it's yeah, I think you've kind of peeled away the technical aspect of it, and then I think you've broken it down into what a lot of people can kind of relate to, which is just going out and essentially meeting new people.
Yeah.
But in this sense, we're doing it like moral aspect aside, we're doing it professionally, which
Right. It's just making acquaintances, maybe is the word for it.
right,
And it's such a strange thing to talk about, because it's a very personal thing, making friends, and we all make friends different ways, and we all have certain kinds of friends we like for certain reasons.
right,
But now you're talking about doing it to progress your career. And a lot of us, maybe most of us, especially working in information security, where we're all about privacy, and maybe lead lives that need to be kept private, personal lives that need to be kept private for one reason or another. The blurring of those lines is not a natural thing for a lot of us to do. I myself had a huge problem with that, to the point where I was bordering on agoraphobia, where I if I was outside of my house for more than an hour or so, I would start having panic attacks. And I had to get back home and do nothing. and that's terrible for increasing, your friends network. But nowadays we're lucky enough that we have, all of these information security conferences going on. You can't go outside without accidentally walking into one. You should have seen my CFP list for this year is insane. And, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing or not aside, if you do find yourself at one of those conferences, you need to remember that the entire reason for conferences, and now I'm talking conferences versus trade shows, the whole reason conferences cropped up is for networking. That is why they were designed. They were to get a bunch of people who work in the same industry together to hang out and talk about stuff and better themselves with the conversations they had, but also make those industry friends to be able to utilize at a different time should the need arise. And whatever that need might be. That need might be, hey, I need a better job, and I know this guy works at that company, and I'm going to hit him up. Or it might just be, hey, I know this guy at that company is working with these same machines that I'm working with, or the same context that I'm working in, and I'm having a lot of trouble figuring this or that out, or presenting a scenario to the business or what have you. And I'm going to hit him up, and I'm going to say, hey, I know, remember we talked about this scenario over at DerbyCon. This came up at my work, and I'm having a lot of trouble getting this across. What are you guys doing over there that you can discuss? And so, even just for that, you're not using somebody to, you're not stepping across people's backs in order to get ahead necessarily. You're just, filling your bag with useful people that you can hit up for information. And at the same time, hopefully, you're also a useful person to them that they can hit up, because kind of, that's how it works. And so that's what you're up to.
Yeah, so I think we've kind of defined it, what exactly it is and what it's useful for. So how would one start the networking process and wanting to get better at just meeting people and building relationships?
Yeah, that's the really hard part. And I think, of course, that's the hard part about starting anything is starting anything. It's really easy. It's really easy to not do anything. It's infinitely easier to do nothing than it is to do anything, mathematically. And so it's really difficult to get away from the terrible answer of start doing it, which, like I said, is a terrible answer.
Right.
But really, that's what it is. And starting to do it is so difficult for us because we live in a time now where it is so much better to never leave our houses and to never leave our little bubbles that we create. Because why would I say go to my local city sec meetup and sit in a room with a bunch of strangers and maybe have a conversation or two with someone that I don't really hit it off with, or that I creep out or have something go wrong, and just have a generally boring time, or God forbid a terrible time, when in my house here I've got every episode of Futurama on Netflix. I have Destiny on my PS4 that I can play until I have to be at work in 2 hours and haven't slept yet. We have all of these great things that we can afford and keep in our houses and make our lives just constantly full of instant gratification, instant satisfaction, and guaranteed good times. Why would I leave that? Why would I go outside and potentially have an awkward time with strangers? It doesn't make any sense logically and emotionally. And unfortunately, we're emotional creatures, and that's how we make all decisions. And so we often choose to not do the latter. Even when we go to these conferences, many of us spend all of our days, or a good portion of our days, sitting in talks, just sitting in a chair in the back and watching these talks, and not talking to anybody else, when we all know that all of those talks are available online. At a lot of the conferences, they're available within 2 hours of the talk having been given. So if you go to, say, DEF CON or DerbyCon, and you spent all 2 or 3 days cooped up in rooms, you're doing it wrong. That's not the purpose of the conference. Those talks are important. Those talks are the supporting framework of the conference, and they need to be done. And it's great that they're done, and it's great that the people are giving them, but they're being filmed, and you can watch them later. You spent a lot of money to go to that conference, and if all you did was sit and watch talks that you could have watched at work on Monday, you blew all of that money.
Right.
You should have been out running into strangers, having lunch, getting a beer or whatever, and starting conversations. And not just starting conversations about work and information security, but just having conversations, because all things flow from that. You're just meeting people and making general acquaintances because you guys talked about some stuff and got along. And if you need professional advice later, you can hit them up later. It's a big part of it. A lot of people don't get. It's not about let's go to these industry meetups and talk about industry things, and I'm going to go to the CitySec meetup and I'm going to tell people what I do at work all day and ask them what they do at work all day. A lot of us don't want to talk about work because we've been doing it all day.
Right.
It's just about making people like you and knowing enough about them to know what you can tap them for going forward, and then about tapping them now and then to just make sure that relationship is maintained.
Yeah, no, and I think Twitter really helps with something like that, maintaining your relationships and going to other conferences.
Absolutely. Twitter is, for whatever reason, huge in the information security realm. Mm-hmm. It's an absolute paradox for people who are focused so much on information security and privacy that we broadcast our minute-by-minute lives on there. But it is an incredibly important and useful tool because it is a great way to literally ping somebody and just see how they're doing. Or if you see them post something, you can just post a one-sentence response. Mm-hmm. Just in their brain, they remember you. You remember them. You're all still alive. Cool. Then it's not awkward when you hit them up a year and a half later for something, because every couple of months, and that's how it used to be.
Right.
Like if you hadn't talked to somebody in a year and a half, no, you just write them off as dead.
Right.
But no, now with Twitter, you can poke people, and that in itself is an art. And I considered putting a talk together on that and got so overwhelmed that I backburnered that one. Just social media management for the purpose of relationship maintenance is an insanely large field that I could probably write a book on. But absolutely. Twitter, Facebook, if you're up for that. Facebook, I think a lot of people use more for personal stuff. It's all about family photos and things. And so that's your call.
I've never been a big Facebook fan, to be honest, but reversing that too, I think Twitter can be a good way to start networking opportunities too, where you just respond to something that people said or start in a conversation or even just ask a question, and you start building connections that way. They follow you back, and you interact with them from, like you said, time to time, and it doesn't have to be pretty consistent. But I've met people at conferences that, hey, I'm looking forward to meeting you. I've met them on Twitter, but I'll get to meet them face to face at these conferences.
Absolutely. 100%. I cannot agree with that more. Twitter is, especially in the information security community, just a 24/7 conference, really. You can easily meet new people on there. Nobody thinks that it's weird. It's just because we're so used to using Twitter that if you meet someone new there, it's not some creepy stranger on the internet and I don't know this guy. There's just more of an informality and a kind of an openness. It's more like Twitter is a 24/7 house party that's going on. And if you've ever gone to like a house party where you didn't know whose house party it was, but you go in and generally nobody's weirded out that you're there. You can certainly ruin that, but for you to come up to somebody and just start talking to them at a house party is not weird. And Twitter's very much like a house party in that regard. House parties also being excellent places for networking.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And that will do it for part 1 of how to network in information security. Hopefully you learned something. If you didn't, drop me a line on Twitter at TimothyDBlock or email me at timothy.dblock@gmail.com and let me know what you didn't learn, and we'll try to cover it in a future podcast. Show notes can be found at timothydblock.com/EIS. If you enjoyed the show, share it with others and rate it on iTunes so it can reach others trying to explore information security. That'll do it. Have a good one.